Hey, it's me, Tim Sway from New Perspectives Music, and this is my lab. Welcome to it. I'm back at Vectric's channel to give you another free project that you can make on your own time, however you see fit. And this is a very special one for me because I've been doing this YouTube thing a long time, and since my very first year doing it over on my channel, I've been doing this Boycott Black Friday sort of thing around this time of year to encourage people to not go, shopping for the trends du jour and box stores and whatnot. Shop locally, make gifts themselves, all that sort of thing, And so this project is in that spirit and in that theme. I'm going to use some scraps that I have laying around to make a project that I can give as a gift. And I'm also going to one-up that a little bit by giving away this gift with it, which is a local whiskey that is made right here in my home state of Connecticut, to kind of further illustrate that we don't have to go to the box stores to get really special, meaningful things and support our community, support our family. You understand. Not going to lie to you. This is a prop. I drank this bottle years ago. But the spirit is there, and this particular bottle happens to be the same size as like an average wine bottle. So this project will work with basically any wine bottle, like standard issue kind of thing. Today, I have some scraps I'm picking from. I have this really beautiful mahogany piece from a piece of furniture I picked up off the side of the road that had a mahogany tabletop. I've used some of the wood in some other projects. There's some more of it right there. And I have this cut off that I'm going to use to do the bulk of my project, I think. And then I have this piece of red oak that's about 7/8 inch thick. It's about 100 years old, some old flooring. Has these little groove lines in it and some glue on it. I need to clean that all up. And I think this will fill in all the gaps that I need for wood to finish this box. But then I also had this fun idea to make the front slide in and out like a kind of a normal thing, but instead of it being one solid piece, I thought, what if it were 4 smaller pieces that could double as coasters? And I wanted to use some other stuff besides wood, so I have laying around this acrylic that I got from a local sign shop. Remember, I'm keeping it all local. From their drop pile of these guys down the street. And I have these 2 pieces. This one is pink, and it has this sort of like texture, which I find a little bit inspiring, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get going. And then I have this blue one, though, that the color really speaks to me, and I think it looks really nice against this mahogany versus the pink. So we're going to just start designing and sort of let the project speak to us as we go, and I'm going to make some decisions along the way. So first, let's hop over into our software. Okay, let's design our file. Now you'll remember that I have a couple specific size pieces of wood I need to make this all fit on. And I'm going to start by just creating a file for the basic size of my piece of mahogany, which is the bulk of the project. I have a piece that is 28 inches wide by 10 inches deep by 3/4 of an inch thick is how thick I want it to be. So we'll start right there and create that file. Now you'll also remember that there was a little bit of a square that was missing, like a little rectangle that was missing from the corner of that. And what I'm going to do is just draw that right here. To be completely honest, this file is actually already done right here. You can see that was my shape, but I'm going to build it all again a little bit right now and show you the steps that I took without getting into details too much about that kind of stuff. The wine bottle I have is 13.5 inches tall by about 3.5 inches wide. So that's my wine bottle. And then I'm also going to create the diameter of the wine bottle, the 3.5 inches. And we'll just go ahead and I'm going to highlight both of these and put them on a new layer called wine bottle. We'll make it so this is the wine bottle approximation of what we need, and I know it needs to be 3.5 inches by 13.5 inches. So that means my box needs to be 3.5 inches by 13.5 inches on the inside, but I have to take into account the thickness of the material. Now this way we're going to have a 1/2 inch back, and in the front we're going to have a 1/4 inch front, but I also need to leave a 1/4 inch of wood to give myself like a little lip to hold that front in. So it's another 1/2 inch. So we have 3.5 inches going this way, but I need to add an inch to make it 4.5 inches for my total thickness. And then going this way, I need to think about the thickness of the top and the bottom, which will be 3/4 of an inch. Sorry, so that's 1.5 inches total for both. So if I'm at 13.5, I need to get to 15 inches to make sure my wine bottle will fit in there. But I'm actually going to give myself a little bit of leeway, and I'm going to make a box that is 15.5 inches tall by my 4.5 inches wide. Here, let's go center this, make life a little easier. Now we're also going to have to make a top and a bottom, and we're going to do all this stuff, properly in a minute, but we need to make this 4.5 inches wide to be the same width here, but it's actually going to end up being closer to 5 inches because we have the thickness of the material on these sides is 3/4 of an inch. So if we have our 3.5 inches on the inside plus a 1/2 inch is 4.5 inches for one direction, but then 3.5 inches plus 1.5 inches for the 3/4 material, so it ends up being 5. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. I'm going to zoom in here and line up my edges, just like so. And I'm just going to make a couple very simple box joints. Now, we do have this gadget here, this box creator, which actually works pretty good. And we can go through and we could make all these parts the way we want them. The downside, well, I'm not going to do it, but the downside to that particular program is that it lays out the box into a specific location starting at your starts, and it just spreads them all out, and you can't move those pieces around once you've used that box generator. It's great because it generates all the toolpaths, but then you can't move the toolpaths around, so I wouldn't be able to utilize all my scrap wood properly. I'd have to just get a big piece of wood that I could make that on. So instead of using the box joint creator, I'm going to make my own by simply drawing some boxes here. We'll go 3/4 of an inch by, we'll just do this for now, 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. That's close enough for now. So now we can see, here's how our teeth go. We're going to want to take on the side pieces, and we're going to want to make them go up into these holes. And then for the top piece, we're going to want to make those holes disappear. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this very same box, and I'm going to use this tool called the, where is it? Here it is, the offset selector. And I'm going to do a duplicate of that box, 1/100th of an inch smaller on the inside. I'm going to do the same thing here. Just to make it easier to see, I'm going to take these two new ones that I created plus this one, and I'm going to move those all to a new layer called sides. Make it a different color, and this is going to make it easier for me to see it as I work. Right? So now I can take this box. I'll just going to nudge that a little longer. You'll see why in a second, just to make life easier. So now with the proper box highlighted, I can go through and now I should have, yes, now you can see I have my tabs that fit right in there. I'm just going to move that out of the way, and now we can do the same thing with this box. You see what happened is that these lines are not overlapped. So when I went to cut it, I ended up cutting the whole shape away, which I did not want to do. So the simple way to do this is to just give yourself a little extra leg room like that, and now we can go and cut those out of the way. And there we have it. We have our tabs that will fit. They're 3/4 of an inch, so they're the same thickness as the material. And now when we cut these apart, we can just put those together. But now the one thing that's going to happen is I will be cutting these with a 1/4 inch end mill. So I will not be able to square these corners up. This is a 1/4 inch circle I just drew, and you can see it's not going to quite cut that corner out sharp. So there's a couple things we can do about this, and you're going to see what happens later. When I go to cut them out, I'm going to end up having this corner is going to be slightly rounded, but this one will be nice and straight, and so they won't quite fit in perfectly. Now there's a couple things I could do to combat that. The probably easiest would be to sort of create a fillet like this, so that'll guarantee that the end mill can clear away the material and the teeth will fit together properly. But then we're going to have these gaps, and I don't want to look at those. So what I'm going to do is absolutely nothing, and then once these are cut out, I'm just going to use a chisel to just clean up those corners, because it's just a really small amount of space, and I want to be able to make those fit nice and tight. And sometimes you just can't beat a chisel. So that's basically all I had to do to create the box. We have to do the same thing again here, so we would just simply move this down and repeat the whole process to do that, and then we would have the top and the bottom, And once this is done, we'd have two sides, and we just duplicate the sides, correct? And then the other thing we would need to do is add some slots for putting this stuff all together. So the back of the box is going to have this 1/2 inch thick piece of wood in it. And then in the front, we're going to need a 1/4 inch slot. And we want to make sure it is a 1/4 inch away from the edge, like so. So we can slide our slots in and out of there. But there's a couple things we need to talk about here that sort of make that a little bit more complicated. And I'll show you in the completed file. So here in the completed file, you can see I have my slots that we were just talking about with a little bit of a lip room. But we want to make sure that we can have the coaster front slide in one side. So you see here I have at the top, this slot goes beyond the edge of the box, so we can slide it in and out. But then here it doesn't go all the way to the edge of the box, so when the box is glued together they won't fall at the bottom and you won't see gaps. And now for the back piece, we did the same thing on both sides, so the back piece will just sort of float on the inside. And when I go ahead and cut these out and put them together, you'll see what I'm talking about. So this way we don't have any gaps that we have to fill on the edges. And then here the only gap we have is where we're going to slide our coaster in. And you'll notice that I had to do them in opposite directions because when we put these pieces together, since they have this graphic on them, which we haven't talked about yet, they will need to both be on the same side so we can slide our piece in. A thought that has been on my mind a lot this past year is the concept of just rest and not necessarily feeling need to always do things with your time. And so I thought the music rest symbol would be a nice little addition to kind of cut into this box and give us a little peekaboo into the treasures that are inside. And so I just simply grabbed a music note vector and put them on here, and you'll notice that I had to make those face opposite directions just like the slots, so when the box goes together there's an inside and an outside and the graphics will face the same way. Now you'll also see later on when we cut the box out that my music notes are my music rests are upside down. I did it completely backwards on the one that I cut, but I fixed it on the file that you will get. And then the one other thing we need to worry about is that since we're going to have our coasters sliding in and out, that means that our top has to have a little bit cut away from one side right here to make room for the coaster to slide out. So you'll see this top is the same as this, except for some material was removed from the front, so we would have room for that coaster to slide in and out. Okay, so now with all our basic shapes designed, we can figure out what size our coasters need to be, and they need to fit down that slot, and it turns out that they have to be 3.75 inches by 4 inches to properly fill the gap when this is closed, and then also fit into the slots and move in and out properly. And then we also had to figure out a piece of wood for the back, which I have here, and I don't remember the measurements off the top of my head. It is 14.5 inches by 4 inches to close the back up. And you'll see we're taking into account that round over. The way when I cut those slots and I put them together, there will be a spot where the end mill ends, and you'll see that 1/8 of an inch round over because it's a 1/4 inch end mill. So for this piece, I'll simply add that round over to it, and it should fit into that hole nicely. So let's talk about our tool paths now that we have this all done. You'll notice that this is a two-sided file, and the reason is I wanted to add some texture to it. If I did not add the texture, I could have actually cut these holes out for the rest and everything from one side if the backs were just going to be plain. But I wanted to add some texture to it, and so I was messing around with the texture toolpath right here, and these are the settings I ended up setting on with a 1/4 inch ball nose end mill. And this is all not because I had some magic formula in my head, just because I was pushing the sliders around and making changes and seeing what I liked. And those are the numbers I came up with. And you can see if we do a little preview what that looks like. I just selected the outside vectors and I gave myself this nice little texture, which was inspired by that pink acrylic that I found in my scrap pile. We do those, and then we also have these 3 little holes that are guides for flipping this piece over to make sure we line it up. So I drill those 3 holes into this into this piece of wood, and then I'm going to drill these 3 holes right into my wasteboard so I can align my material with my CNC and make sure everything lines up perfectly. So then when I do that, I can go ahead and cut all these pretty simple profiles, which are, well, here, we'll just watch them. Just basically cutting these slots for my boards, and you can see I made sure to run them past the edges a little bit, so our on the tops here, so our ends would cut clean. And we just have some very small tabs, and you can see right here, because of the material, this is like pretty sketchy. Hopefully everything will go okay there and it'll hold together. I think I have enough. There's nothing really there either, but I think I'm going to be okay because I did undersize this just a little bit for what I actually have. And we'll hopefully not have any problems cutting that out. But you might want to space these out a little bit for yourself when you do it, just to give yourself a little more room to make sure none of your pieces fly up on you and get ruined. So that's how we cut those. And we can go to our coasters, and we're going to talk a little bit about toolpaths here. There's a couple different ways that we can clear away these semicircles, and with acrylic it gets really noticeable of what's going on. So you see I was just doing a little bit, just 5/100 of an inch cutaway, just to give us something to look at for these coasters and give us some separate textures from between the bumps to a smooth area. And there's a couple ways we can do it. One way is we can start in the center and go around, and you'll see I cut it that way once, and then I did it again in reverse because you could really see the way the blade cuts the plastic, and you see like where one side looked really smooth, the other one looked sort of fuzzy. And then I also messed around with doing it as a raster, where you go back and forth in straight lines, and that does a pretty good job too, but it doesn't get the edge. So if you do this way, then you also have to do a final path on the inside at that same depth to just clean up that inside edge and make sure it's all nice and smooth. Well, here we'll do it on the raster way because that's the way I had to set up. So here we'll see, slow it down a little bit, and you can see it goes back and forth, but look at those edges, right? Those edges are not good. And so then we do this clean edge, and now we get that nice clean edge, and then cut out the squares. And that's pretty much it. So now that we have generated these files, I'm going to go cut them and see what happens. This In the Labs project, like all the other In the Labs projects, is free for all Vectric users to go to the webpage, there's a link below, download the project, and make it on your own machine. The complete Vectric file is ready to go. You just got to open it, put your material on the machine, and hit send. The only thing you want to do is just make sure that you have the same tools that we use in the toolpaths, and check some of the feeds and speeds and dimensions to make sure it's all going to cut safely and efficiently on your CNC machine. Now that I have all my files designed, I'm going to start cutting them out and see what happens. So the first thing I need to do is I need to take the material that I have and get it to the right thickness. Obviously the acrylic is good to go, but my mahogany is just a little bit thick, 0.84 inches, and I want it to be 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to run that through the planer a little bit, clean it up. And then my oak is close to an inch, and I need to get this down to a 1/2 inch to get rid of all these lines because I don't want to see those. So I'm going to have to run this through on both sides. Now, if you don't have a planer, you can just do this on your CNC. You know that. You can put it right on the board and just level it. Get it right where you want it. Some people would prefer to do that because it can get a little more accurate, but I'm in a rush. Cleaning finish and glue off through your planer is guaranteed to gum up your planer blades, but my blades are already pretty old and shot at this time, so I didn't mind doing it. And then of course I drilled some pilot holes to just simply screw this stuff down to my wasteboard. I really liked these textured toolpaths because they were very easy to create, and I thought they looked good, and now I know I don't have to do a ton of sanding because that would just be defeating the purpose. A guide router bit makes quick work of the tabs, and then I had to carefully find some safe places to run some screws into my mahogany so I could safely screw it down to the wasteboard. And you can see I didn't really have a good spot on the edge of the wood to run a screw without the risk of hitting it. So this is one of my little tricks. I used a little scrap of hollow core door skin and just sort of bend it down to just sort of hold that still in that corner. And now again, I mentioned I don't have to sand this, of course, but I do need to clean it up a little bit. And I use this very soft bristle wire brush. This one was brass, to just brush the entire carved part over, and it came out looking really nice, real easy. Those are those reversed guide holes into the wasteboard so I can help line up my work. And you can see I make the holes at 3/100ths of an inch and just use little scraps of pencil. I've been using those 3 pieces of pencil for probably about a year now. Works pretty good. And you can see also that I do this trick a lot, as I have all these different holes marked on my wasteboard from other projects, and I try to label them when I think I might be using them again to just save a couple minutes of CNCing. It's really cool how little cleanup and sanding there is to do with this because of that whole textured pattern. I just had to lightly sand the inside and clean up some corners here and there. While I'm dry fitting these pieces together, you can see the inner corners here are rounded over because of the 1/4" end mill. So I figured what I would do is just clean those up manually with a chisel and make them nice and square. The other thing we could do is we could put a slight round over on these tenons, but I'm going to try the chisel thing first, and hopefully I won't regret it. If you have a nice sharp chisel, this is not too difficult to do. I tried a couple and my chisel was not sharp, so then I stopped to sharpen it and it went a lot easier. And I just used my square to help mark off where those corners should be, cut tightly. And that was it. It took a couple minutes. I always think it's kind of cool when I mix some traditional woodworking skills with CNC woodworking. That's the real future, is like hanging on to the important stuff from the past and adding the important stuff from the present and future. Because this was a tabletop, there were some screw holes in it here and there, and I was using it as a workbench top for a little while even. So I just filled those holes in with a little bit of some dark CA glue. I used this Starbond brand. You could also use epoxy, or either like a 4-minute, 5-minute epoxy, or the stuff that takes longer to cure. And then here on this piece, there's a couple holes on the inside that don't actually go through. This one does, but it's kind of tiny. I'm just going to leave that one. But this bottom, I just wanted to plug up a little bit. And once I have it all together, I'll make it look a little better. But I think we're ready to squeeze this together and glue it up. So I'm going to put glue, just not a lot of glue, just a little bit of glue in each of these joints, just enough to make sure it stays together when it's there, because they're pretty tight, so I don't think I need a ton. I forgot to really focus the camera on it, but you can see here as I glue it up that the slots I was talking about both have to go towards the top for them to work properly, and even though everything looks like it's symmetrical, it's not, because the box is going together, so those two faces had to face in and line up properly. It took a couple minutes of squeezing and just shuffling around to do it all at once, but it glued up real easily. I love the no sanding finish. Normally I would probably really sand the heck out of the box to blend those box corners in, but instead I just removed a little bit of glue and chamfered the edges with a hand plane, very light sanding the finish. And then I used this new product from Total Boat called Wood Honey, and it's like a non-toxic safe rub-on oil finish that is a little bit lighter and thinner than the stuff I usually use, so that worked really well for this whole textured surface. Got in all those nooks and crannies real easily. But I still have to cut the acrylic, and here you can see what I was talking about in the design part of the video. When I go counterclockwise as I cut these out, you can see the left side of the circle is a little bit fuzzy and the right side looks good. So I was curious when I saw that what would happen if I went the other direction. And here you can see going clockwise how it sort of cleans that up a little bit better. And then of course when it was done you could see all of the witness marks from where the end mill went. And of course you could change your overlays and do all sorts of things, but you also see the start point. That whole line across the top is where it starts for every circle and shifts. So then I thought, well, what if I did this rastering, and I went back and forth, and then cleaned up that inner edge like we discussed, and I'll show you in a second what that looked like. Acrylic is kind of a pain in the neck like that, and I don't think I'm fully happy with what I got. I just sort of left it to finish the project because I'm actually going to use the blue coasters that I cut with it. I just like that color better, and those are just squares. I didn't do the circle inlay into them. But that's what that back and forth rastering looked like. Unsanded right off the machine. As you can see, once the box was designed, which it is for you, I'm the one that had to design it, but now you don't have to. It went together pretty easily, and I ended up liking that sort of light blue color better. And there I just, slid those in, and I didn't want to put that circle in. I don't want to have the scratchy roughness to that. But I'll show it off both ways here for you at the end. But I think if you show up at a holiday party, you set this box down the table, pull these 4 coasters out, and grab 4 glasses, and have a nice bottle of something in there, you are definitely going to be the hit of the party. And I thought about it too after I made it. You could probably even put like a little rope handle on it or something and sort of carry it in upright. But I have a big hand, so I just picked it up and carried it like it was. But if you grabbed a nice piece of, some jute or rope and you just drilled 2 holes in the top, you can, right through the front, tie a knot on one side, run the cord through, tie a knot on the other side, and cut it to fit. And you could have a nice little rope handle, which would look nice against that rustic sort of carved facade. Oh, and another thing you could do when you're presenting it is take some of those scraps and just make some nice curled shavings of wood with your hand plane, and that makes a nice little sort of nest to set the bottle in. Again, don't forget you can just log into your V&Co account at vectric.com and have access to all of these files. And I did clean them up a little bit before I sent them, so have a look, and again, make sure you can safely cut them on your machine before you just run them. They should be pretty close. The other thing I wanted to mention is that a box like this is a pretty universal thing. Like if you don't want to do the whole coaster thing, you can just cut this 4-inch by 15-inch top and make a box that you can then use more traditionally, and it could be a box that maybe you store stuff this way. If you don't like these holes, you can remove them. You can put your own holes. And also, if you're not going to use it for alcohol, you could avoid putting this little circle reference in the bottom, which is not necessary even if you are using it as alcohol. The sky's the limit. Don't be afraid to take these files and make them yours. I didn't make them for you to make what I made them for you to make what you want to make with them. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you have a safe, happy, and healthy holiday season, and I hope that all of your gift-giving needs can be fulfilled right in your own workshop or in your own community, or maybe some combination of both, because, as the world gets smaller with our connectivity where we can reach further away, I think that we're all learning that it maybe means more to do as much as we can here, and here. All right, thanks a lot, and be good.